Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about in. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete for Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m., of course. Come on, we just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn, do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what you're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy.
Hello, welcome into another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is really talked about enough. My guest today is a trained therapist turned mental health coach, a professional friend empowering us to advocate for ourselves without causing collateral damage, regulate our nervous systems, and raise kids in a way worth repeating. Please welcome the host of the Shift Talking podcast, the one, the only, Davina Hehn. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to give anybody a little more rundown about yourself? I mean, that's a lot of words to say there.
I know. It's a long intro. I'm working on condensing it.
She's like, I'm working on it.
It's hard. I'm like not a marketer. I'm like putting all this together with duct tape and ChatGPT. So I went to school training as a therapist, and throughout that, my schooling, it was in forensics. So I was doing prison systems, sex offense, and I realized that not everyone has a diagnosis, that a lot of us are really just lacking skills, communication skills, coping skills, these types of things. And so I took that after graduating with a ton of debt and no longer wanting to do therapy and just being very lost into this, which is where I got certified in anger management, conflict resolution, mediation, and now I'm in the coaching side, being able to teach skills that a lot of us weren't taught, like the list of our lives versus just, igneous rock formations that we were taught in school that nobody cares about. So now I'm just trying to work in prevention and help parents regulate themselves so that we eventually, don't raise another generation of wounded humans.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes sense. So is that the idea behind your podcast, though? I've seen some of your videos, though. I thought they're very interesting, your way to approach kids from a different way, like, giving them their space. And I think it's a refreshing approach, though, if you think about it, because a lot of kids now are more in tune to their emotions, and, you can't approach them the same way like our parents approached us. And, because it never worked out well for us. Your dad coming in yelling at you, it always eats up the conversation, and everybody gets mad and things like that. And then it ends up that everybody's just getting hot-headed, saying things, and all that great stuff we should have learned a long time ago. That doesn't work.
It's hard because our parents' generation and those of us like myself who were raised by immigrants, they didn't have the luxury of worrying about how we're feeling. They're just trying to survive. And that's really where we are at now for those of us who do have the luxury to focus on these things, that our job as children of immigrants or even just children of, our parents' generation, they were much more conservative, much more antiquated in the thought processes and the view that like kids are quote unquote resilient. And so therefore they don't need to be talked to and shared with and collaborated with and educated on what we're feeling and how we're feeling it. And we forget that it's our parents' first time living too. It's all of our first time living as far as we know. So what I really try to do is bring my kids along for the ride as I share with them what my experiences are in a day-to-day basis, and really just give them tools and ideas for how to regulate themselves, how to even identify how they're feeling. I'm raising 2 boys, 2 men, and that's, of course, a very different experience than how I was raised. And so I'm really just trying to, instead of being a shadow like I was for my parents, right? Like I had a good childhood, typical things of like divorce, eldest brother was an addict, these types of things. I was brought along, but not guided throughout,
Mhm.
right? Like when family members, when my parents were navigating their divorce, when we were navigating my brother's drug use, there was a lot of this that I was present for these things, but I wasn't talked to about what's happening, what I should be doing with any of these emotions, how I'm doing it on a day-to-day basis. They just didn't have the bandwidth. And that's really where I'm recognizing a lot of us just could have benefited from being informed about these things. I grew up a very anxious child because I knew I was experiencing all of these big feelings, had no idea what they were, what to do with them. And so I internalized them and I shoved them down, and I didn't really know how to navigate this world.
Yeah.
And then
No,
parenting hit me and here we are.
I could tell you as a dad of 3 girls that when they were living with me, raising them on my own, it was the most interesting experience ever because you know how a lot of times we separate boys and girls, and guys don't know much about the girls, and girls don't know much about guys. I feel like that's one thing we need to change, though, is that we should better understand each sex. So that way, when it comes to that, we can better inform these kids of just different things in general, you know? And it gets weirder because it's just like everything is meant to, oh, that's a girl's thing, that's not a guy thing, you know, or mom, this is your job to handle these things, you know, and stuff like that. I think we lost you. I think we lost you.
It really is. Yeah.
I think we're losing you there for
I'm
a
here, I'm
second.
here, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, you're kind of lagging in and out a little bit.
Okay. Okay, good. That's so odd. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a very different experience, and I'm not a child development expert by any means. I'm not a parenting expert. What I'm with the people who happen to be parents in
Yeah.
helping them, helping us understand who we are, how we lost our identity, and how to get ourselves. Most other parenting programs are all about the kids. And while that's,
Hmm.
of course, helpful, regulate myself throughout their tantrum, it's it's working against it. It's a short-term solution. It's a Band-Aid. And I'm really just trying to clean out that wound, put in a stitch.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, because if you're not educating the parents as well, it's like, how are they going to teach any kids after that? Like, you know, this may be the first kid you have, the next kid, are you going to still have, you have a new set of tools to how to raise them a little differently than you would have the first child? Because, like you said, we're all first living our first lives already. And, you know, we're trying to teach someone else the things that we were taught, you know, and it's not always the right thing either, you know. And as you said, you know, putting the band aid on it, that's basically what we're doing is just kind of like, oh, what kind of guessing as we go on this one for the first one? You know, all those commercials you see that say, oh, well, your first child. And then the second child, it goes to the next one, and it's a whole different experience. They're more relaxed and mellow and everything else like that, too. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. I heard this a few years ago and it made so much sense that we grow up with our first child and then we raise our second and however
yeah, you
many
know.
are after that.
Hmm.
And I definitely experienced that. I didn't know how to do any of this. I wasn't born to be a parent. I never babysat. I didn't know how to do any of this. And I was out of my depths, and it's a bait and switch when it comes to parenting. They're like, "Yeah, have a baby. It's so cute. Do this, do that." And then it's like, "Oh no,
Right.
raise these entire humans. They're going to go out into the world and affect other people in the world." It's
Yeah.
wild. And when we don't know how to regulate ourselves, how to identify the emotions in our own bodies, how to maintain good, positive, healthy relationships with not only our kids, but our partners, our friends, our family members, our in-laws, for goodness sakes, these types of things will be absorbed by our kids and they will repeat what we don't repair.
Yeah, exactly. Because they start noticing at like 4 years old, they'll start watching everything you're doing. And I think that's a lot of times what people don't realize is that kids at an early age, regardless of the fact you say, oh, they don't understand. Oh, they understand. They may not be able to tell you, but they're watching exactly what we're doing and they're taking notes and they're mimicking all those behaviors.
Oh,
Mom and dad yelling at
absolutely.
each other. We want to do that too now. It's like, let's stop doing that.
100%. And that's the hard part, is that we're told to stop doing that. We're told not to spank our kids, not to yell at our kids, not to punish our kids, but we aren't told how to actually do that from within, how to
Hmm.
actually regulate our nervous systems, get quality sleep, how to navigate through this in a way that's truly an understanding versus just kind of like, okay, I'll do as I'm told, but I don't really understand how it works. It's the rules of the
Exactly.
game instead of the objective of why I'm playing it all.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that. That's really good. That makes perfect sense when you put it like that too, because we're basically just kind of playing by the rules we're given. It's like, well, you're not supposed to hit your kids. So then what am I supposed to do? I can't discipline them. I can't say something to them. It's like, you don't want to tell me what else I could do to them. I mean, anything short less. It's like some of these people, I love when you tell people like, oh, listen, when you grew up in the 90s, it was different. It was a different time. Like your parents could spank you and discipline you. And nowadays, it's like you can't look at a kid the wrong way or, oh, nope, I'm going to call somebody. Somebody's going to come get you. You're in trouble. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's where I think the whole gentle parenting thing got a really bad reputation from the get.
Mm,
So what we know is that gentle parenting is more of authoritative
yeah,
parenting, where it's like we're boundaried, it's this, it's not authoritarian like we grew up with, which is like because I said so and this
yeah,
whole deal.
yeah,
And what gentle parenting got kind of warped into is this permissive parenting where like we don't use the word no in this house and the kid rules and whatever the kid says is how it goes. And these types of things just got so skewed that I think a lot of us just wanted such a different childhood than we had,
mm,
and went the complete opposite direction. We're overcorrecting. So instead of having kids like us who, or within our generation, that were reprimanded in a type of way or punished, and we are, of course, have the effects of that, we then overcorrected into this part of like our kids being incredibly entitled and very poorly regulated and not knowing how to manage rejection, how to manage the word no and hearing no. And it's really just trying to like find something in the middle for
yeah.
us to think within to, which is what gentle parenting is actually, but we just heard the word gentle and we took it way too far.
Right? You can't say no in
Yeah.
this house, all right? You're not allowed to say those words. Stop. Those are forbidden. It's like the Harry Potter thing, like don't say that's Voldemort. You can't say that name. You can't say no in this house. You can't tell them no. I'm like, okay. Or the people look at you weird when you're parenting your kids. It's like my wife is like, oh, I'm just gonna leave you behind and start walking off hey, listen, you're gonna stay there. You can't. Everybody looking at her like she's nuts, and she's
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't care. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do at this point. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And it's so
Well, I
hard
mean,
though when it comes to like stepchildren too, because it's like they're not your direct child. So like you have to play by a whole nother set of rules too.
yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that is something that I have not experienced firsthand. What we did do in February of this year is we relocated. We knew that we were done in Las Vegas where we were originally, but we didn't know where we wanted to be. And my sister's here in Northern California or Bay Area, and she loves it here. And so we decided to sell everything that we own and move in with them. We're full housing it for a year while we decide if this is where we want to be or whether we want to be elsewhere. So now we have 4 adults and 5 kids under 7 in one household. And so we're kind of co-parenting my nieces and nephew, and they're co-parenting our boys. And that's like the closest experience I think I've had to any
Yeah.
sort of, you know, stepchild, anything. And it's a challenging thing to navigate, and especially if there isn't a lot of communication happening.
Yeah.
And like what expectations are, how much is too much, where do I lean in? And so how have you kind of navigated that? What have the pros and cons been?
Yeah. I'm just I try to do my best. My wife corrects me a lot of times. She'll say, oh, we don't do that or we don't say that.
Mhm.
And it's because like I raised 3 girls on my own, so I raised them differently because I was never taught anything differently. I only know what I was a product of my environment. So like with
Right.
her, it's different. We like when she's in trouble, you let her know what she's in trouble for, but you don't just keep repeating it to her. And like our other parents would have done. Well, you're still in trouble for these things and like that, you know. And it's different because my wife parents different than I do, you know. Like she's trying to teach her things, and I'm trying to teach her things as I go too. And it's interesting to watch. Like for a kid that's 4 years old, she's really intelligent though. You can tell she notices things. She's watching you. She's constantly seeing what you're doing. And like, you know, if we start having a disagreement, she'll come in and start telling us to stop. So like I'm learning to not argue in front of her. You know, like if we start having an argument, like walk away from the situation and come back to it with a cooler head prevailed, you know, and just, you know, if we're going to have a disagreement or I'm going to get upset, I'll walk into another room, close the door, you know, and, you know, kind of let out my frustrations and then come out, act like everything's okay. Like, you know, I'm all right, you know, and things like that. Just because I don't want her to see me in a different light, because like she idolizes me. Like whenever we go to pick her up for our weekend or whatever, she's always looking for me and things like that. And you know, it's a little different because I'm more emotional with her and things like that. You know, hugs and things like that. Like I wasn't with my kids. I wasn't really like didn't do that kind of stuff with my girls and things like that because it was just I raised them differently. But it's a whole nother approach now because my wife has a certain set of rules. You know, and her ex, you know, are basically the main parents, and then I'm the other one that's here as well. So I'm trying to juggle them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. I'm going to do something that upsets her, but you know, it is what it is. Like she's getting used to, like, she's really sensitive. So like if I get loud, like I'm a generally loud person anyways, it upsets her because she's not used to that. You know, like when I raise my voice, she can read the emotion of what's going on. So like if I'm getting upset, she can tell. And it's new to me because my girls were never like that. Really, they didn't really pick up on that kind of stuff. You know, because I would yell and scream a lot. Because that's what my dad used to do. So I thought that was okay, obviously. So I was yelling, screaming all the time. I don't do that, though. With her, it's different. I actually talk to her and have a conversation with her. Like, I ask her to do things. Like, I'll make sure she gets eye contact. Like, I do like this. I'm like, hey, listen, look at me. And she'll look at you, and then you'll tell her what to do. And then she'll go and do it. Versus what I used to do is sit there and scream, shout, yell at everybody else under the sun. And, you know, didn't get the same results, you know, as I get now with her because I know she knows what to do. And like, I'll ask her to pick up her toy. It's like, hey, listen, can you pick that up for me? I make sure I'm looking at her eye to eye. We're making eye contact when we do it. And I clearly scripted to her, hey, listen, can you go pick that up for me? And she understands it too. And that's why, you know, like she'll try to play that off on her mom a little bit, you know, let her mom try to let her get away with it. But I'm like, no, she knows what she's doing. She knows exactly what I showed her. I said, this is what I'm doing. And there's a woman that where I work comes in. She was talking to me about it. I was telling her, hey, listen, this is what I do. I said, I got her eye contact, and I said, listen, hey, look at me right here. You know, and I'm like, we're looking eye to eye, and I'm explaining it to her. And she said, that's actually really good because she responds to it well, though. Like I said, she goes and picks up whatever I need. Hey, listen, can you get that for me? Or she always wants to help me do stuff. So, like, you know, it's great. So I let her start learning. Like, hey, listen, here, you want to help me load the dryer? She'll come running in there trying to load the dryer with me, which is really cool. So, okay, here you go. I'll hand it off to her and let her do stuff like that, you know. So I spend a lot of time with her because when my wife's here, she works weekends sometimes. So when it's just me and her hanging out. So, you know, at first it was a little weird because it's like, it's not my kid. So it's a little different for me. But at the same time, you know, she doesn't see that. She just sees it as, okay, well, there's somebody here that's watching me. I like him because he's real nice to me and everything like that, you know. And me and her kind of bonded a lot since the beginning. We met each other. You know, at first it was interesting because I haven't had kids that were that young in a long time. And she was about 2 when I met her originally. And my girls are all like 12 and 15 and older. So it's like, you've got to restart again. So now you're trying to raise another 4-year-old when I've got the older ones and I'm out of practice. But, you know, at the same time, it's like, I can do things differently. Like you were saying, you know, we could do things differently this time around versus what I did with them. So.
Yeah, and I think there's a blessing there. Like this is a really beautiful opportunity. A lot of the parents that I work with, once they do have this kind of experience where either they become a step parent to younger kids or eventually have other kids of their own, their elder kids can almost feel like, well, I didn't get that softness. Like I didn't get this tenderness. I didn't get that version of you that's more healed, that's more aware, that's more regulated. And I mean, it's just how it is, right? Like that version of you raised those girls, and now this version of you gets to raise this one. And what I learned, especially because what I saw growing up was conflict in front of me or behind closed doors, and then everyone comes out and we're fine. And for me, I didn't know how we got there. Like I didn't have skills of how to repair. And
Mhm.
so now whenever my husband and I enter into a conflict, either in front of the kids or behind closed doors, and we're, they can still hear us through closed doors. Whenever that really happens, what we will do when we repair is invite our kids in to watch. We'll say like, "Hey, do you remember earlier when me or Papa, when we were loud with each other?" "Yes." "Okay, great. Well, like, here's what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna explain to each other how we were feeling, and this is how we're going to make peace." And
Yeah.
so they actually get like a front row seat in what that looks like, how that sounds. Sometimes they see us flare up a little bit more, and then they see us kinda come back down, and I'm really trying to model the whole thing start to finish for them
Yeah.
in a way that is appropriate. Like, of course, certain
Yeah.
times we're like, "Hey, this topic isn't appropriate for you guys. We're gonna go
Yeah.
talk about it in private," but generally, this is what it is, that, like, mama's feelings were hurt or papa's feelings were hurt, whatever this is, and we are teaching them to not apologize for having feelings. It's more so
Exactly.
about, like, what you did with them. Like, "This is why I got upset, and just because I'm upset doesn't mean I raise my voice. Here's why I'm apologizing, and here's what upset me, and here's what I'm looking to achieve with you. Here's what I'm wanting you to understand about how I was feeling." And that's typically the advice that I give to really any parent with kids of any age. I think it's really
Yeah.
important that you see us repair and see how that happens versus argument, then we're fine, or argument, then silent treatment, and like energy's funky and we kind of don't really know how to navigate throughout. We have to read the room, walk on eggshells, walk on broken glass, who knows? And that's really something that I can imagine being, of course, really helpful because I see that daily with our kids and with this like next opportunity that you get to raise, I'd imagine that that's a conversation that your elder kids will likely
You
wanna
know,
have with you, yeah?
they are not too happy about it. Okay, so this is a scenario when my wife and I had gotten married. They feel that I basically restarted a family without them, and now mind you, the other part that's in this conversation is their mother, who is is a very big narcissist. She basically paints it that I'm the evil person, this and
Mm.
that, da, 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 because I had a lot of mental health issues in the beginning. I wasn't addressing, but after they had decided they want to go live with their mom. I was like, okay, well, you guys want to live with your mom? That's cool. I understand. That's great. If that's what you want to do, I'll support it. But I didn't get the help I needed. And now that I'm getting the help I need, it's like I'm fighting the war of now it's, well, they don't want nothing to do with you. This is coming from the mom now. This is not said by them. This is by their mother. Their mother's telling me that, oh, they don't want nothing to do with me. And then this and that. And it's like none of the girls have said any of this. It's just coming through the one channel of person that's saying it, that's speaking on behalf of all of them. And even
Mm.
though I've tried to make them all feel included, like they've come and visited before, they've met the little one, so they know
Yeah.
that that's your sister by marriage. That's your sister. You have your little sister as well, and they all interacted no problem. Like had no issues whatsoever. No friction between them. The younger two were really great with her. They all had a great time. She was very really attached to one of the twins that we had. That one of my twins, which she was very attached to. Things like everything went fine, and then it was when they went back home that all of a sudden there's a conflict. Now all of a sudden, it's coming from that one channel though. It's not coming from them directly.
Mm. So do you not have access to them? You don't speak to them directly
They don't
anymore?
talk to me directly. Actually, their mom keeps changing their phone numbers. The one of them doesn't want anything to do with
Mm.
me because I'm an evil person and all those kind of things. So it's a constant attack on my mental state a lot of times. But I don't let it affect me honestly because all I hear is her saying something. I don't hear them saying anything. I just hear her talking for them. So I'm like, okay, well, she's the only person saying something. I'm not hearing anything from the other ones.
Yeah. And I mean, when we're not in very much control or influence of how I can be perceived and all of that, what we tend to see is eventually in their adulthood, they get to learn what the truth is and where
Yeah,
that really goes. What I always recommend in these kinds of situations is that you document these things in real time. Right?
yeah,
Like you can keep a journal to them, talking to them, sharing with them about the work that you're doing, what it feels like to be far away from them without villainizing them or mom, and kind of allow for that to happen. You give
yeah,
them rich data of what your thought processes are like and what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And then eventually, likely in their adulthood, you can share that with them. And I think that there's a lot of really rich information that shows a vulnerability from you, that shows a very in real time kind of tracking of what this looks like and gives them insight into what it is that you're experiencing, and of course, challenges and hardships that you're experiencing too. I think
Yeah,
that there's a lot of benefit to that, to giving them that.
Yeah, someone else suggested that too. I interviewed. They were like, they said set up like an email, basically. Same idea what you were talking about. Just like send emails to them, basically, as if they were responding to emails, things like that. So I'm going to do that though. I've thought about it now. Now it's for sure I need to do it because you said the same exact thing, and it's like, well, maybe that's what I need to do because I think that was the hardest part though, is not talking bad about the mom. As mad as I was at her about our situation, it didn't involve them, and I feel like that's one of the things I did wrong. And, obviously in these letters, it'll be addressed to be like, I should have done that. That should have been the way I've handled things. I should have went about it a different way. I can't change that and everything else like that. And, but I think I thought it was a great idea. Honestly, when it was presented to me originally, I was like, that's a good idea, because like I said, all I'm hearing is her say something, but they're not saying anything. They want nothing to do with you, this and that. And, all these constant things, a narcissist would do is just trying to get you to believe these things. But I don't give into it. That's the thing. And I think that's what irritates her the most is that when she's attacking, I don't give her anything back. I give her like one word answers. Don't really give her lengthy ones. I don't fiercely text her back or anything like that. I really calculated how I do it because I know if I keep feeding into it, she's going to get me enraged and then she's going to get enraged. And then it's just going to be a back and forth of who can throw dirt at who faster kind of thing. And I'm not trying to continue that cycle. So
are you familiar with like the gray rock or yellow rock?
No.
Deal that when you're working with someone or trying to collaborate with someone who's just deeply challenging and likely has narcissistic tendencies, there's a term called gray rocking where you basically act as interesting as a gray rock. And so it's these quick answers. What we end up seeing with the gray rocking is that sometimes it can make things worse pretty quickly because of course it sparks them and then it causes so much more conflict between us. And so now there's this concept of yellow rocking, which is basically where you still keep it cordial and it's like borderline friendly because the tonality is positive, it's collaborative without really like leaning in. So when she emotionally baits you, you don't take the bait, but you acknowledge or you answer what question it is that she's asking. Right. Without it just being like a yes or a no. And like, that's it. It can be like, yes, that's what I'm thinking for today. I hope you're well. Like these types of things that kind of allow just a little bit more friendly throughout.
Yeah.
But it's something you need to do to keep yourself boundaried.
Yeah. And it was my wife's the one that taught me that too. Like she taught me so many things ever since we had gotten together. Because I used to go in the text wars with her and things like that. Now I'm it's like she always tells me, tell your wife to stop texting me. So I joke with her sometimes like, hey, stop texting her, okay? What's wrong with you, man? Because she gets so mad because I won't give her any information. So maybe I am kind of yellow rocking her a little bit, honestly, because I don't give into it, but I'll acknowledge when she says something. But she'll be like, oh, well, they don't want to talk to me. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's awesome. They'll wait till they tell you themselves. Okay, that's awesome. That sounds great. I acknowledge the fact she said something, but I don't give into what she's saying at the same time. So, and you notice if you watch her, she gets mad, or sometimes she'll just get so mad and start fiercely typing things to me. And I'm laughing to myself because I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond to this in the least words possible and just without agitating it further or giving into it. And it's kind of a game at this point. And it's like, I think a little more clear now that I've started this journey from the beginning when I started this podcast. And now I've learned so many things along the way. And I'm starting to discover more about myself. And it's been a great journey. And I get to meet great people such as yourself and other guests I've had on here, and stuff like that. And it's like, I start to realize that if I don't react right away, that I'm less likely to continue fueling this fire even more, because then it gives her less things to use against me. Because if I'm not saying a lot, then she gets frustrated, starts send these giant text messages and trying to give us, okay, well, that's great. Well, you have a great day. Things like that. And keep it very short and sweet. And you can just watch her get so mad and she just continues to start slamming the keys, I'm sure, on the other side. And then just word paragraphs just keep coming. I'm like, all right, I'll read that later when I got time. I don't let it so much control me. So.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the point, right? Is that a lot of the time whenever we are in like these emotionally fueled things, we will intentionally kind of poke and prod and bait the other person in order to know that they still care, to know that I can still affect them. And sometimes it's with poor intention and other times it's whatever our wounding is. But there is kind of that part that it sounds like you're doing a really great job of kind of keeping the emotion away from the fact of the situation and
Yeah.
choosing how you'll respond instead of just reacting to this emotional kind of bait that she's putting out.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is too. I'm not feeling that fire even more for her to continue to use it against me and weaponize it. And and it hurts to read what you're being said, but at the same time, I got to remember that it's only coming from her. I'm not hearing it from them directly. So until I start hearing it directly from them, even at that point, I'll still kind of question it a little bit because
Yeah.
she's very manipulative as well. She likes to manipulate people. And she did that when we were together too. She like tried to manipulate me and gaslight me and things like that, and get me to think that I'm the crazy one when I knew that she was being unfaithful and things like that. And I have to remember that though, if we do, me and the girls have a conversation, to leave all that out of there. It's strictly about them, nothing else. Don't worry about anything to do with their mom. They bring it up, it's going to be, well, we're not here to talk about that. We're going to talk about you. Keep the conversation focused towards them. And things like that. And that's my plan, honestly. But at this point, like I said, I don't really have a lot of contact with them. Heck, I don't even know where they're living at now. I think they've actually moved to Illinois with where their mom's from originally, because I had messaged her and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in town, on these dates or whatever," just to see what she'd say. And she's like, "Oh, where are you coming in at? Where are you?" Like, I don't know where she's at because someone knows where she's at. So but I always have tabs, to know where they're at, because I always want to know how they're doing, regardless of the fact that I can't be as involved as I want to be. So,
I mean, I get that. It sounds like you're doing what you can with the limitations that are placed upon you.
yeah.
And at the end of the day,
Definitely.
it's path of least regret.
Right.
Like, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong thing to do. I think it's just certain paths tell me that this is likely to be my path of least regret. And so I'm going to lead with that, with the
Yeah.
best of my knowledge as I am now.
Right. So let's change focus here. Let's talk about your podcast now. So how did you come up with the idea? I love that it's a no fluff is in your description for it. You're like, no fluff. I'm like, I love it, because people tend to tell me I'm brutally honest, but I'm like, I'm just telling you what it is. I don't sugarcoat things. I just tell you. So they perceive me to be the quote unquote asshole. So I'm the asshole apparently, because I'm being completely honest with you. And it's like, no, it's just being honest with you. I'm sorry that you feel it's other than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the advice of be brutally honest without being brutal.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where I think this comes from, is that my training is forensic. And so it was very highly boundaried, and just, we don't give any room.
Yeah.
And so now what this is kind of evolved into is this professional friend who is your no bullshit friend, who you would call when you really need that advice that you don't really want to hear, but you need to hear. And you will be called in, not called out. Where I'm not doing this to humiliate or to belittle or anything. It's more so hey, loving out of all of this is out of love and support and unconditional positive regard. And here is where we're at, and here's what this looks like. And I think in the mental health world, especially in the therapeutic world, there's a lot of this very tender, soft, gentle way of describing things. And which is, of course, what I used to do with my therapy voice and the whole deal. And we're seeing that people aren't necessarily getting better when we're kind of tiptoeing around what this is. And so it is a very no BS thing of hey, this is where we're at. This is what this looks like. Here's why you get angry. Here's where anger comes from. Here's what we have the opportunity to do with it. And so the whole concept of shift talking is, one, because it's kind of cheeky.
Yeah.
And two, that I have this kind of 5-pillar framework of the shift. So we hear about perspective shift, life shifts, these types of things. And I really wanted to break it down in a way that feels digestible, because when we're doing this work, as you know, when we're trying to make these drastic changes in our lives, it can feel like everything has to change all at once. I have to abandon the version of myself that I am in hopes that I get to this next version that I want to be. And so everything within the shift framework is very small incremental changes, where within any situation, we break it down into our S, which is our self-awareness, our sense of self, our self-efficacy. We get to know ourselves, likely to the same degree, if hopefully deeper, than we're attempting to get to know other people, our partners, our friends, our kids, these types of things. And then from there, we heal some of it. And it doesn't have to be this like super intense therapeutic, weekly therapy trauma work. It's more so accepting certain parts as truth. We like heal through the bullshit is what I call it. So it's basically just accepting previous versions of me that erred, that made mistakes without shitting on her, without making her feel small, without judging or ridiculing. And instead, it's just, this is what happened. This is what my experience was. What was I looking to achieve? How did I go about it in a poor way? And what can I do differently next time? Which brings us into our I, which is innovation. We're innovating something. We're trying anything that is new and different than I have done before. And then through different types of innovations, we get to this point of our F, which is our fortitude. We build that mental grit, that awareness that I can do hard things. I can persist even when things get challenging without reverting into my autopilot, my old ways, my old wounds. And then as we build more fortitude, that I have confidence in my ability to navigate this. I do believe that I have the room and I have the ability to make these changes. We end up in our T, which is just these very small incremental transformations. So it's not all of ourselves all at once. It's more so these small shifts over time. And that's where this whole thing came from. It was actually my husband is my muse for the shift, because he is why I got into anger management in the first place. I knew that he needed it. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that like when you're hitting stuff, you go to anger management. And so I got trained in anger management in an attempt to kind of fix him and infiltrate from within, and learned how much of the problem I am, how many things that I was contributing to the dynamic.
Yeah.
And it opened my eyes to different things, that just because he was more obviously problematic didn't mean that I wasn't more covertly problematic. And so that's really where all of this came from. And he has since, we're celebrating tomorrow is his 4-year sobriety birthday. He's doing a beautiful job. Yeah, he's incredible. I'm so incredibly proud of him. He's a phenomenal human and I just adore him so much. And it was when he started doing this work that I started calling him the shift hero, because he also worked food and beverage, GMing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I started calling him the shift hero because I was like, you've made all of these shifts, and I created this acronym all around him. Yeah. And then when I was really looking at the work that we do, I was like, oh, like that's basically the entire thing. And like, this is what I'm doing over here. And so he's been my muse for pretty much all of the work that I do. And now he got anger management certified, and he and I run certain things together. And it's just a really beautiful kind of 180 that we've been able to do together.
Well, that's so awesome that you guys do it together, though. My wife has thought about doing this with me. She's on the fence. Okay. So she agrees with what I do, but she's very my harshest critic, which, I think that's correct. Your partner should be your harshest critic, especially when it came to doing this topic I'm in, and she's like, you got to be careful because you don't want to come off as not authentic, because if so, people aren't going to take you serious. And like, she's been my greatest critic and my muse as well, because she's the reason this whole thing even started. Because when I started this podcast, I had started my own mental journey. I'd gone in, found out that I deal with anxiety, depression, and I have ADHD, and it was interesting because all it started was because at one point I just went completely berserk for no reason. And then all of a sudden she just looked at me and just said, okay. And I don't know what it was. It was something like that. But, it was like, boom. After that, I was just really curious, what else out there I don't know. So when I started this show, I had just sent it as an idea. And I fell into a podcasting network that I'm on now called Oracle Talk Radio. They had reached out before I even started doing anything. They basically told me I had a show. The idea is like, I want to explore the mental health field. Like, I don't feel like people talk about it enough. Like, I'm just an average guy navigating this stuff, like I'm not an expert. I'm learning things every time I meet somebody, and I get to meet interesting people along the way. And ever since the beginning of this thing, it's kind of evolved from like, you see me evolve as a person too, because I'm learning new things about myself as I go. And, the different people I interact with. And, in the beginning of the year, we had an interesting conversation come up about suicidal ideation with a gentleman named Brian DeCasio. He was sitting there talking to us. He was telling us, hey, he literally like 30 minutes into the show, I did not see this coming. He literally goes, hey, Pete, I forgot how he worded it exactly. Basic idea is that he was sitting at the edge of the bed with the item in hand, ready to pull the trigger. Basically, he said, before we started recording that episode, I was like, whoa. hold on, this is an interesting conversation, because afterwards I had about 15 people go, is he okay? And it got me to lead to where I'm heading now, is I'm going to do a panel actually on the same subject. I've invited 6 other people. I have another doctor that's actually going to join us. She was on the show too. And we're going to have a discussion about it. I'm like, I think like at this time, I think it's time we start talking about these things, because when it comes to that stuff, like people get uncomfortable with these conversations, and it's, the problem is that the numbers are rising, especially in the younger kids too. It's like, it's scary that this is happening and we're not doing anything about it. We're just allowing this to continue to happen, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insanely common thing, and yes, it makes people uncomfortable, and right, like it's one of those things that like we talk about once we lose someone by their own hand, that we tend to hear like, oh, we didn't know any signs, and I wish they would have reached out and okay, but are you actually reaching out to the people in your life that seem fine? Right? Like,
Exactly.
they're not likely to show these, like, deep depressive things all of the time, and if they do, they're unlikely to show it to the people around them, and so
Yeah.
there has to be way more about that, and while, yes, it makes people uncomfortable, so does the concept of death in general, but it's a guarantee, and the more we avoid these things, the more life and fear that we monger about them, and the less capable we are of knowing what to do about them. This is why, like, I even did a whole episode on Shift talking about how we lost my grandmother last July, and we brought my kids, and they watched her take her last breaths, and we talked about it. They came to the funeral. We did everything step by step, let them know what this would look like, what she looks like. We spent time with her body afterward. We really did. I'm trying to like remove this like unknown, fearful veil on one of the only things that we know is a guarantee in life, which is death. And when it comes to suicide and self-harm and these types of things, because it makes us uncomfortable, everyone shies away from it. And because the people experiencing this are being shied away from it, it further perpetuates this ostracism, this isolation, this like, I'm the only one experiencing this kind of feeling. And then we're shocked, of
Agreed.
course, when these things come up.
Oh, it's funny you say that though, because there's a couple guests I've had. And one of them was named Alex. He was on, and it was like the last episode I did of the year. We were talking, and he mentioned like he had attempted 5 or 6 times, and people were like watching and going, "Oh no, I didn't know this." Yeah, of course he didn't tell you because he didn't want you to know. Just like you said, you're not going to tell the people around you what you're thinking, because if you start talking to people about that, you don't know how they're going to react. They're going to think either you're crazy or they're going to think that there's something wrong with you, and then they shy away from the conversation because they're like, oh no, what do I do in this situation? I'm going to run away now. Like, oh, Godzilla's coming to destroy the building kind of thing. But, he presented as like everything going well at an MLB career he wanted to do and all that stuff. But no one knew what this internal struggle he had. And it was like, that was more reinforcement. And every time I met somebody new that kept saying the same thing, they basically said the same thing. They're like, yeah, I thought about it too. And I'm like, so I came up with this great idea. I was like, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Like, let's invite 6 people on and see what happens. And, hopefully it's going to be the first of many, honestly, because I want to do as many as possible, because I think it's interesting to get people's perspectives on what they think. And then having Dr. Kristen, who's going to be there as well, is great, because then we'll have somebody there that can help them if they're having problems or something, and we could, she could have for some advice, anybody else listening and things like that. So my goal is to have as many as possible, because I feel like the more we have this conversation, we'll break the stigma around the whole thing of that it's not okay to talk about this kind of stuff, because it's a problem, because the statistic keeps going up. Clearly, we need to do something now, and if we don't do something now, like what are we going to start doing something?
Right, we're going to continue losing the people that we love, and that's exactly why the work that I do is so focused around having difficult conversations. We have to be able to navigate these things in a way that gives us all community, right? Like, we're surrounded by people, yet we're lonely as fuck most of the time, and it's because we don't know how to have these conversations. And our whole experience with me and my husband is his drinking. No one in my family knew. So by the time he was going through sobriety and getting sober after a crisis that he and I had, there was that. Like, my family was just like, all of our families were like, well, we never even saw him drunk. Like, it was it was completely out of the blue because he and I did such a good job at keeping it private. I didn't let anyone in. My mom and my
Yeah.
sister are two of the people that I'm close with in this world, and they had no idea. And so for
Yeah.
years and years and years, I kept it quiet. We would fight behind closed doors at family events, and there would just be this like hush, hush, hush about it because I knew once I talked about it, I would likely have to do something about it, and I didn't know what
Yeah.
to do with it yet. And once everything came to light, it was one of the agreements that me and my husband made was if we are going to rewrite our marriage and start a whole brand new marriage based on the healing and the work that we're going to be doing, then I'm not doing this in silence anymore. I'm not going to
Yeah.
hide this shit anymore. And so we called every single one of our family members and had a private conversation with every single family member, told them everything that was going on, what the crisis consisted of, where we were at now, what we're planning to do next. And ever been out in the open. It was uncomfortable and gross and I hated it. But we both knew that it was necessary.
Yeah.
And now we have very open conversations about how hard parenting is, how hard marriage is, about our mental health struggles. And it just allowed for all of us to have more of these conversations on a real level that's
Yeah.
very
Definitely.
uncomfortable, sure, and necessary. And
Yeah,
it's
I
what
agree.
you're
I
doing,
agree
I
it's
think is
100%
phenomenal, and I
necessary.
hope it's one of many.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Listen, I'd love to invite you to
Absolutely.
join one of them going forward. Obviously, if I'm going to do a men's mental health panel too. If he's interested, I'd love for your husband to join us too, if you'd like.
Yeah,
Um, I think it'd be an interesting thing.
absolutely.
I'm not really sure the time and dates of it yet. I know it's going to be. I'm going to try
Yeah.
and do it in Men's Mental Health Month, obviously, but I know right now we're looking at May 5th for the first one. For
Mhm.
the suicide panel because I thought it'd be interesting. Like I said, I want to force the conversation out just like you did. You had to call everybody and tell them about it. I want people to start having that gritty conversation, like whether they like it or not. This conversation is going to happen. You know, it's
Yeah.
gonna be a trigger, obviously, for some people, but I think it's a conversation that we all need to start having. Is like we need to talk about these things because these statistics are going negative. We need to make them positive because if we don't start, like I said, if we don't start doing something now, we don't talk about our mental health now, when are we going to start talking about it? Because everybody deals with something, and the great thing about the show is that when, people come on and share their stories, somebody out there is going to see it and be like, man, I saw that. Now I want to come talk about my problem. It's great to see I'm not alone. And I think that's the biggest thing is creating a safe space for people to come and discuss these things. Like, nobody here is going to judge you. If somebody tries to, I'm going to shut it down instantly because that's just not how we do things here. I'm inviting you to come be on my show and be vulnerable and tell me these stories, and there's been some crazy stories that have been told on here. I had a girl that just basically sent you on a roller coaster the whole time. We're going up and down. And I'm like, oh no, this is getting more interesting in a minute. Anything from getting kidnapped to sexual assault, and getting assaulted as a kid and things like that, and not telling anybody about it. And you're like,
Yeah.
these people are sharing these stories with me, and things like that, having these uncomfortable conversations, and I'm an empath. So like, I'm feeling this stuff as we're going. Like, I think the most interesting conversation to date had to be in the Brian and I's conversation. And then I had one with the Columbine shooter survivor. She was
Wow.
inside the library and she was sitting enough distance that she could see the white eyes of one of the guys that were involved in it. And I was like, I'm sitting there and I'm recording this, and this is strictly audio, and I'm over sweating. I'm like, oh God, where's he
Riveting.
at? Like in my mind, I'm just thinking, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm over here having a panic attack listening to her talk about this. I'm like, oh God. And she's like, yeah, I'm inside the library. I'm like, oh God. It's like what? It's like having a Dungeons and Dragons experience, except for you're the one, you're living it through her eyes and she's your character basically. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
don't go over there. Don't come out from under the table. No. And it was interesting because it was like, I didn't know it was coming either. She didn't tell me that. She just said, always involved. Didn't say, hey, I'm sitting 6 feet away from one of the guys looking at me holding a firearm. And I'm like, what? Okay,
It's
yeah.
terrifying. But this is why these conversations are so incredibly important. It's why, like,
Mm-hmm.
coming up here soon, my husband's gonna be coming on here, and we are going to be having very raw, honest conversations about crisis, about
Yeah.
sobriety, about challenges in parenthood and marriage, and my kids are gonna come mainly my elder son, he's gonna
Yeah.
be 8 in 3 days. He's gonna come on here, and we're gonna talk about, like, what it's like to be a kid, and when we get loud, and what that's like, and what he needs, and how he experiences the world, and what we're all really trying to do is stop talking about the conversations that we're having and instead let people into the conversations that we're having and what they actually sound like. I think it's so important, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I think it's great that you're bringing him in to understand, get his perspective of things too, because I think a lot of times people don't listen to the kids because the kids are the ones that experience these things as well, and getting his perspective from an 8-year-old's mind is still an interesting look. Like, okay, this is what he's seeing. He's seeing mom and dad argue and things like that. You guys aren't portraying to be any cookie cutter. It's like, well, you already said you guys argued a lot and things like that too, So like, it'll be interesting to get his fresh perspective on what he thinks, at 8 years old, and the fact that you keep him involved with everything else is really great. I think that it's going to benefit him in the end, honestly, to have these conversations now. So like when he gets older, when his situation were to arise, he'd have a better understanding. Like, hey, listen, I've been training for this all my life. Let's go. Put on that cape like my dad did, put the cape on and go for it. Because at this point, I think it's time to have those conversations with kids now, because if we don't start teaching them, like, that our emotions are normal, they're going to start thinking it's taboo to do these things. Well, I can't get mad because mom's going to get mad at me for getting upset. Like, they're going to get upset. It's okay. It's part of your life. Like, if you all get angry, we get angry about everything. We get excited about things. We get loud about things. It's like, let's not make it so taboo to do these things, though.
Right. And also, like, how to face the consequences, right? Like, the reason why they know when they're doing something that's not great, it's part of growing up. And we can tell them all day long that, like, I'm a safe person. And if something goes wrong, you come to me first because I'll be able to help.
Exactly.
But then our kids come to us and we lose our shit on them.
Yeah, exactly.
And we tell them that we're safe to come to. We tell them to come to us if there's any problems, any trouble. And yet when they bring it to us, we double down on their fears. We show them, we emulate, we basically just project all of their fears onto them. And then we're no longer that person. And no wonder they're hiding stuff from us. And these are all the things that we're learning little by little. And so much of my parenting is just like constantly in flux. And I think that that's just kind of how it has to be. And it just, if they don't know what this looks like, if we aren't actually showing them and modeling these behaviors, these conversations, the coping, the life changes, the shifts that we're making, then they're not going to know miraculously how to do it. We didn't. We're learning in our 30s, 40s, 50s.
You never stop learning, honestly, if you think about it. That old saying goes, you never can teach an old dog new tricks. I think that's overplayed now. I think it's overplayed. I think it's overplayed at this point, because you can still learn new things. I'm learning something. I'm almost I'm 40 this year. I'm learning new things as I go. I'm learning how to respond better to certain conversations. Like, I try not to fly off the handles so much anymore. I'm working on that too. Like, think about before I react, because if I don't, I'll start saying something, and then, it'll be one of those things you can't take back once you say it, and that was always one big thing with the kids. I always told them, it's like, think about this in the conversation. Think about what you say to somebody, because they may not be there the next day. So just remember, what you say to them could be the last thing you say to them. And I know it's grim, but at the same time, it's the honest truth. If you think about it, it's no bullshit. It's straight to the point that, listen, you should think of, because they're saying nasty things to each other, like all these kids bullying each other over all these stupid things. It's just, it's horrible. It really is. It's just, and the internet makes it worse, because now you have more ways to get to people. Before, it was just AOL and the phone. Now it's TikTok, X, Instagram, video games. You can get on all these different games and everything else like that, And now that they're all of a sudden having to be forced to regulate the chats and things that people are doing, it's like now everybody gets mad. Well, like, we can't do the same things we used to do, because we're not getting anywhere with these problems we're having. Like, you can't go online and say the same things you did in the 90s. Like, we always make these jokes about Call of Duty lobbies. It was like no holds barred. Things got said in there that probably should have never been repeated ever. And there's kids in there too. You're mixing in little kids that are just like, their mom and dad don't know. They're like, okay, well, there's this video game they want to play. They're going to go out and play with people. And they get in there and don't realize what kind of conversations these people are having, and it's like these little kids just talking to me. Hey, everybody. Hey, shut the fuck up, little. You know what I mean? It's like, no, brutal. Stop. You know what I'm saying? And they just get ugly. And then, like, I had a situation when I ran into that. My wife was playing online, and she's still new to the whole idea. Said, hey, this little boy I was playing with was getting bullied by somebody. So I was like, okay, I got you. So I messaged this guy. I was like, hey, I heard you like to pick on little kids, I went straight to him. I was like, hey, man, don't be picking. Like, I heard you like to swear on little kids. I think it makes you feel good about yourself, doesn't it? He's like, what do you mean? Don't act like you don't know what you said in front of this kid. I know exactly what I said, And then it's, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, bud. I promise you did, because I won't be wasting my time to reach out to you for a little kid who I don't even know that you were swearing around for no reason. And it's just like, come on, guys. Let's have a little more censorship about what we're saying.
Well, and it's wild. And I think that there's that part about like, we dealt with some bullying situations when my kids started school, mainly my eldest. And there were these parts where you talk to one parent, they're like, oh, pull him out of the class, like switch classes, switch schools, whatever this is, and go talk to the principal and do all of this. And given there were times that my son wanted me to do that, of course. And what I kept telling him was like, there are assholes everywhere. There are going to be mean people throughout your entire life. I can't remove you from those situations, and I can't just remove them from you in those situations. We have to work on how you manage these things.
Yeah.
There will be mean people everywhere, and like we need to figure out what you're going to do about it. And so, of course, we have that like 3-step thing of like, if something's going on, you tell them that you don't like it and that it's not okay. If they don't listen, then you go and tell an adult. And if nobody listens, then you take care of it your damn self. Right. And it becomes this whole thing. And there was another kid that started new. He was a new student in my son's class, and they were in first grade. And this kid is cursing out all these kids, flipping the bird, doing all of this kind of stuff. And so they come out of school and they're just like, oh my gosh, this kid, he was so mean, da-da-da. And so me and my husband sat him down and we're like, what do you think his experience is like at home?
God, I can only
for this
imagine
kid to just
come
in here, go like just doing this out here, we have to understand that like he is doing that because here is where he has any sort of power. He has no say at home. So we have to give him grace, show him friendship, show him kindness, show him things that he isn't getting anywhere else. And then of course they did. And then they learned all this wild stuff that this kid is going through. And then they became friends like 3 days later because they only saw the problematic behavior.
Yeah.
They saw this kid being atrocious to other kids. And then once we were able to kind of give them perspective on what that was and lead with kindness for him, they were all great friends within a few days. And it was wonderful. And that's where, when we're talking to people about like why they're treating other people poorly and what this is, it's more so like, okay, yeah, like you're being really harmful to this other kid, but like, what's going on for you? Like, what's happening for you? Do you need a friend to talk to? Do you need someone? Do you need support? What is this? And it's one of those things that I think because people are so problematic, we have so much opportunity to be incredibly problematic people that we lose sight of the fact that like those people are suffering in so many ways. Maybe they'll let you in and maybe they won't, but there is room for us to try. And that's what I think, if all of us could just lead with the tiniest bit more like kindness and curiosity about what people are going through, I think it would lead us to a much better existence. But it's a really hard thing to teach people, of like how to be in that chat room and like leave it where it's at. They're saying shit to you. How do you just leave it there and move forward without that echoing in your mind and in your brain for decades to come? Like a lot of us have going on.
No, I agree with you there, because like they say some pretty heinous things, and a lot of times I tell people just let it roll off the shoulder. And I actually taught my kids early on. I said, you want to know what it's like to get trolled? So I simulated what it'd like to be trolled. So I was playing with a friend, and she was like, you're kind of hard. And I'm like, I need them to understand, like, if you're going to be online, you need to expect this may be happening. Just give you an idea. This is the kind of stuff that might, and I went hardcore to let them understand, like, hey, this is what you're going to deal with. So don't let these people affect you. There's a mute button for a reason. Just hit that mute button and go on with your day. Don't give in to their nonsense, and like, trash talking is great if if you have the right audience to do it with. You and somebody else have a little banter back and forth. Okay, that's different versus them coming in and saying like wild, outrageous things. Because my kid dealt with bullying too, because she was questioning her sexuality, because she was like, "Oh, Dad, I might like girls." I'm like, "Okay, I still love you either way. I don't. What did you want me to say? I hate you. Don't do that." No, that's not how that works. My mom, on their hand, when my brother had told her that he wanted to he wanted to transition, that was a whole ordeal with that whole thing. And I remember what he had gone through, and I'm like, I kept it in mind when she brought that to light to me. I was just like, I'm not going to treat you any differently. You're still my daughter, regardless. If you want to be a boy, you can be a boy too. It's like to do these things. I don't care. You like girls? Okay. What does that matter to me? I don't care. What do you need to hear from me to make it okay for you? Because she's like, well, I think I like girls. Okay. Well, that's cool. If that's what you like, more power to you. I support you 100%. I don't know what you're fishing for. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not, she's like fishing for some answer. Like, I'm going to say, oh, no. Oh, God, no, you can't do that. That's against God's wishes or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not going to tell you that. So, because she dealt with bullying too. And it was more because I think the boy couldn't handle rejection. Like, she wasn't interested. Mm-hmm. So then he started making the obvious vulgar comments because she was experimenting with girls at the time. She was, so he's making these nasty comments. So he'd make fake Snapchat accounts and start sending nasty messages to her. And I knew who it was, the little kid and everything like this, and it's just like, he has little man syndrome. I kept telling her, I was like, listen, honey, he's got little man syndrome. I said, boys, we don't know how to act right. And, I had to give her the conversation because I was like, it's the truth though. Like if you see these guys nowadays, the things they do is just like, it amazes me. Like you're watching them say these vulgar things to people. And it's like they're getting off on these kind of ideas and think this is cute and it's funny. It's really not. But what are you showing these younger kids that are seeing you do these kind of things? It's like you're presenting to them that it's okay to talk to women like this and stuff like that. And it's really sad, honestly, to watch. Like I tell people all the time, I can't apologize for all of them. I'm sorry, because this is just funny to watch because the vulgar things they'll say to a pretty girl for no reason. I'm like, yeah, they don't act right around pretty girls. Is what I always say. But it's like, we got to do better because we got to teach these kids that, this is how you should talk to someone, not like be disrespectful and, bullying on people, it has bad results sometimes. Unfortunately, some kids end up taking their lives because of that whole situation.
Right.
And it's horrible to hear because, and things like that. And I think like with the one that I really like recently was 13 Reasons Why. When that show came out originally, they had changed the ending because it was so graphic for everybody. But at the same time, it's so real though. Like, this is literally happening. You're watching this girl actually commit it, and she's doing it, and it was so upsetting to people, they had to change it. I'm like, well, what did you think was going to happen at the end of this show? Like,
Well, and I think the problem was, too, that show romanticized a lot of it, too.
It did a little bit, too, yes.
Mental health, it romanticized suicidal ideation and that type of thing. And that's where it's a fine line between putting things out there for advocacy and to bring light to these things, and a whole other thing when we like make it something that's like that they would maybe want to emulate or experience themselves. It's a very, very, very fine line.
And it is when it comes to that kind of stuff too, because like, what is that other one? The HBO one, Euphoria was an interesting one too.
Yeah.
My wife said that it triggers her at times, so she'd watch a little bit of it and then she's like, I got to stop because this is starting to trigger me a bit. But it was so intense, though. You're watching this girl struggle with her addiction and things like that, too. And I was like, these shows are great. But at the same time, like you said, you're walking that real fine line between where you're going a little overboard or you're just kind of like fantasizing this a little more than it should be, and things like that. And I get that it's a show, but at the same time, like you don't want to make fun of something like that or make it seem like people feel like you're making a joke of people actually struggle with these things.
Yeah, or again, romanticizing it, making it seem like something that they might actually want to mimic.
Yeah.
It's all dangerous. And as long as I think we're having these conversations, right, about with our kids, with our nieces and nephews, with our stepchildren, whomever it is, we have to be guiding them through what it is that they're seeing and experiencing and help them process it out and like kind of know what to do with all of this shit that's happening in their internal world.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree with you 100% on that one. So, all right, we're going to start wrapping up here, actually. Davina, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you being here. I definitely love to have you come back again and maybe bring your husband with too. It'd be great. He's always welcome to come too, by the way. I think it'd be awesome. So did you want to go ahead and plug some of your socials for everybody? I know you're on TikTok and everything else. I have it all out of it in the comment section already. So, things like that. Do you want to give them a shout out to any of your other socials or where they can find your podcast at?
Yeah, so shift talking is everywhere. And then any socials, my handle is asteadyspace, and which is the name of my practice. Come in, get balance, and then go back out into the world. And then I am launching the parental shift program. That's not a parenting program. It's a program for parents to do their work, find who parenthood buried, and do this kind of work to communicate better and get to know themselves and make these small shifts over time. The first month is completely free because I just want everyone to do this work with me. And so all of that can be found either on my website or any of my socials, A Steady Space.
Well, that's awesome. That sounds like it's gonna be a very interesting thing. I'll have to check it out for sure. So definitely gonna have to check that out. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. You all know where to find me. I'm X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save somebody's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, hey, don't ask how your day is today. Ask how your mental health is today.